Hello, hi everyone, and welcome to Recruiting Live. My name is Katrina Kibben. I swear I'm going to fix that little name thing in the corner at some point. I'm just not the administrator on the account, so don't make fun of me. All right. You are at Recruiting Live, like I just said, and Recruiting Live, if you've never attended before, is not a webinar. So if you're here expecting slides and the two of us to be highly scripted, that's not what you're going to get. What you're going to get is a live Q&A stream created for you that I'm just going to moderate. I'm basically your voice to ask all the questions you want to our awesome, awesome guest today, Will Staney. And I've been following Will for a long time. You've been doing employer branding for a really long time, and you just started your own company doing employer branding. So why don't you talk a little bit about your background and then, what you're working on now?
Sure. Yeah. I really started my career early on in sort of digital marketing, actually to realtors. I was teaching them how to use digital marketing to attract sort of this new home buyers coming in. This was early, to mid 2000s, and then one of my clients was a recruiter, and I started showing them stuff, and they're like, "You should teach recruiters this. This industry needs that." I'm like, "Okay." And so I started at VMware. Just kind of created my own job description, and then built out VMware Careers. Went off to sort of moving up into HR leadership and recruiting management there. Then to Success Factors and SAP, where we built out Life at SAP, which has just won a bunch of awesome awards with employer branding. Our team's still over there doing amazing, great stuff. And then I wanted to try out a little bit of recruiting leadership, so I went and led and built out the recruiting team at Glassdoor. Went over to Twilio and did the same thing, and then while on paternity leave, I decided, you know what, I want to start a company to where I can really help as many companies as possible sort of evolve the way that has evolved, and really modernize their recruiting program. So I founded Proactive Talent Strategies. I'm here at our headquarters in Austin, Texas. And pretty much what we focus on is everything recruiting. So anything from back-end recruiting strategy, recruiting training, auditing the company's full, recruiting health, to the front end, employer branding, EVP, social media audits. We also have video productions team where we do amazing documentary style employer branding videos, advisory, and things like that. So our goal and our mission is to help as many companies as possible modernize the way they recruit. And we don't, at first I thought I was going to do sort of thing where it's just me and I just take on 1 or 2 clients a year, but I realized it didn't fit my mission. And so I've sort of built this amazing coalition of consultants like with Sedef, and we've got Grace, Pete Lawson, and we just added Angie Veros to the team. So just really building this awesome team of superhero recruiting innovation strategists to help out customers like GoDaddy, Realtor.com, and many more that we're lining up now. So it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I've been watching as you've done, especially the GoDaddy stuff recently. Watching those videos, seeing how you're doing the work behind it. And as somebody who comes from more of a marketing background, a lot of people say to me like, "Oh, well, employer branding is just marketing. That's all it is. It's just taking marketing stuff and doing it in recruiting." And I'm starting to get the sense that maybe it's not so clean cut. So as you're adding people to the team, as you're really defining your strategy, is it just marketing, or how do we blend?
It's absolutely not marketing. I mean, I think digital marketing principles are infusing into every facet in every role in every industry. We live in a social media world where everyone is sort of a marketer, right? But the fact is that employer branding itself, its foundation is in employee engagement and culture. Because the thing is if you don't focus on your people, if you're a company that doesn't have a great culture, you're not going to be successful at getting the word out and attracting talent. I have I have several clients where I've come in and they're like, they're hiring me thinking I'm going to come in and build sort of a marketing strategy for the culture, and then I go through the discovery interviews and I realize the culture is not great, right? And then I'm kind of like, hey, let's first look at your culture and listen to employees and fix some things, because right now you don't have a good story to tell, right? So it's a lot more than marketing. Sometimes I feel as a consultant a lot like a culture therapist. I come in, the chief people officer, the chief marketing officer, and then directly with the executive team, with the CEO, to really drive transformative change and then help them learn how to tell an authentic story and engage their employees. The byproduct, I think, of to me, employer branding is employee engagement, and the byproduct is talent attraction. It's something that will naturally happen if you're focusing on the real and the things that really matter. Because you can go out there and just market a company and to work there, like historically we've done for years. And what happens is you're not telling an authentic story, and then employees start there because your recruiters are saying, "Oh, it's great, it's great." They look at your career site, happy employee photos, and then they get there and they realize, it's not all unicorns and rainbows. It's they start getting buyer's remorse. I remember when I was leading recruiting over at Glassdoor, there's a big study they had done that showed like 60% of people have buyer's remorse when they start a company, or after they started a company. Within 3 months, they've really decided whether they're going to stay here the long haul or not. And if you put a really authentic presence out there, I mean, I think things like Glassdoor and Indeed's reviews online that just sort of power the people to give people as much information as possible before engaging with a company about an opportunity. It helps both sides. It helps the company too, because then you're not spending time interviewing folks who ultimately aren't going to be a great fit.
Yeah. So David Nicola, I remember the pronunciation. He said, you should add culture therapist to your LinkedIn headline.
Give me one of the endorsements for
culture therapist. So if you know that culture sucks, and that has to be a starting point, where do you start? And I know it's not, bring your dog to work and ping pong tables. So how do you actually impact culture? Like, what's the first step?
Yeah, so I talk to employees. I get their feedback, and sometimes, the thing is a lot of these employees really care. Like, they really care. Like, they actually believe at a fundamental level there's reasons and motivations they came to work there, and that they're hopeful. And also, people really love to be a part of change or the evolution of a company. My career has really been focused on a lot of sort of B2B or unknown brand companies who are really big tech successes, right? And so I love that opportunity because it allows you to really get creative, and it's harder. It's so much harder. It's easy to go into a really well-known brand and then do employee branding because everyone already knows. Now you're just selling the people side. But to go into a company that maybe isn't as well known and then help them tell their story is really, really cool. So one of the places I start is getting that data, both anecdotal data, meaning I just talk to a ton of people and I really get their individual stories. And what happens is you start to find these themes in all of their individual stories that align, that are the same. And that is your employer brand. That's really what motivates people to stay. I ask them questions like, why did you come work here? Or if they've been there a long time, I say, why do you stay? This is a hot market. This is a candidate-driven market right now. Why do you stay? It's in those answers that I really understand what the EVP or the CVP for that company is and help them do it. And then I work really closely with the chief people officer, with executives at the companies, even the big companies, even at GoDaddy. I sat down with C-level folks and I give them what I'm hearing from folks and help them drive change. So giving them data. So also surveys, so that's that primary data. Giving these HR leaders data to go back to the CEO so they invest in and say like, hey, 70% of our employees feel like the mission doesn't align to the experience at the company, and that drives some really great change, and it's awesome to see it happen, right? So I start with that. I start with discovery. I start with data, and that really informs what strategy we move forward with and what story we tell.
So it sounds like you're collecting a lot of qualitative data. Is there any quantitative data that you bring to the table when you're doing that discovery process?
Yeah, I mean, we look at exit surveys. We look at the recruiting data and source quality.
Yeah.
Looking at which sources are employees coming from currently, and then even if we can get that data, so who from which sources did your highest performing employees come from? Was it employee referrals? Was it sourcing, outbound sourcing? And then that really kind of helps to understand. And then we also do, like, we help build out personas to understand, like, when we interview all these employees, the ones that are maybe model employees that you want more of, right? I ask them questions like, where did you find this job? Like, where do you go online? How do you network for positions? But also just, where do you spend your time? What do you like to do? Like, who are you? What are you like? Like where do you read your tech news? Where do you spend your time? How do you communicate with your friends online? Like, I want to know their online behaviors, because I want to help the company build a strategy not to attract just active candidates actively looking for jobs, but like, where can we put your brand that's in the places where your target audience or target employees are just hanging out and would be most likely to see it and be influenced by it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that helps inform referral programs too. So do you consider referral programs part of employer branding?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about most of the stuff that you do with employer branding, the thing that you would see the most bump in that I typically see is employee referrals, and that's the goal, because when you're engaging employees to tell their stories and be a part of it, they're actually thinking more. It also drives sort of this culture of recruiting that everyone's really has pride in the company they work at and what they do, and they feel like they're making an impact, not on just the customers or their colleagues, but an impact on the company by helping hire other people. Companies that are really successful with employer branding have executives that really value talent. And that's like one of the biggest differentiators I've seen between a company in more of a culture decline and a company that has an amazing culture of highly engaged employees. It's the executive team listens, and they understand that talent is really important, and that some of the best ideas come from the bottom of the hierarchy.
Exactly. It's an investment in people, and
Yeah.
realizing that the most powerful thing you have for recruiting is actually the people who share stories, your advocates that are already in-house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just had a question come in from Tom Bolt, and he said, how would you coach HR tech salespeople to research prospective clients? I think there's a bit of branding in that, right? It's like getting to know somebody beforehand. He says, I get calls from people who don't have a clue who they're talking to.
Yeah. And that's a really great question, and something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, because when I was at SuccessFactors and SAP, I actually, as an internal practitioner, got involved a lot in the sales process, because we actually started this HR sales program because we noticed that problem in the industry, that you had these HR tech sales folks reaching out in bad ways, and they didn't really understand the customer. So I would do trainings with the salespeople on like what's actually trends in recruiting, teach them about their. I think if you're selling HR tech products, you should understand HR and the market. And I think when you do that, HR people know. And some of the best HR tech salespeople I know were former recruiters or HR people themselves, because they understand it. And if you don't, it's actually okay, but your company has HR professionals at it, no matter what company you're at. Like,
Exactly.
involve them or ask them or like, network with people in the business. There's a lot of us online, and we're willing to share. Read Recruiting Daily. Like understand the industry, and so that when you reach out, the kind of questions that come up as a salesperson, they change because you understand sort of the issues that HR people face, like low budgets, and that it takes a lot to get buy-in. If you're adding more value to an HR person and not just being all about the hard sale, you're going to be a lot more successful. And that's the way I see it. I'm probably a terrible consultant because I'm constantly giving away all my secrets, like all the time. Like I posted a blog. I did a webinar with Lever the other day where I literally gave away like my whole secret sauce to my employer branding engagements. I'm like, I get paid to tell people this stuff, and now I'm doing it. But I think companies should do that too. HR tech people, they're doing stuff internally at SuccessFactors SAP. We did this through we call it drinking our own champagne, like using our own software, actually doing it really well, and then showing customers how to do it. And putting out information that was valuable to them, whether they bought our products or not, adding value to the community.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think when I'm training, I always think about what keeps your customer up at night. And if I were to say 50% of your employees are leaving tomorrow, if you know what I mean, and having those conversations that really target their, I guess the opposite of ego, their insecurities, their worries, the things that make them feel less valuable. And because technology in its best form actually helps people, feel more secure in their role, feel like they're being more productive. So when we get to that side, I think that's a better marketing conversation than, look at my widget.
Yeah, and honestly, and I've seen it go the other way where, recruiters and HR people are focusing even too much on the technology piece.
Yeah.
And not enough on the business partnership piece. If I'm an HR tech salesperson, and in a way I am, I run a business that sells into the sector, I attack it in a way where I'm helping them do the biggest thing that I think keeps HR and recruiting leaders up at night, and I think it's that they're not getting a seat at the table for the most part. A lot of times they're seen as a cost center. They're not well funded. When I'm engaging with clients, not only am I helping deliver on work and strategy for them, but at the same time, every once in a while, I'll send them information that I know is going to help them when they go into that discussion with their CEO or their E-team, that they can prove their value and they can prove why HR is or people, why talent is literally the number one thing that decides whether a company is successful or not. And I was sitting, one of my clients who's a chief people officer, information on some studies that are done with employer branding and sort of the cost of a poor employer brand. And she was like, "Oh, this is awesome! I'm actually going in a meeting with my CEO now to see if we can get some more budget for employer branding and recognition projects. This is just perfect." I want to make sure that I'm helping them impact their companies more.
The bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually wanted to get to that because we briefly talked about a study that you had that kind of justified and gave some data behind employer branding, because so many people, and this is not a diss on employer branding or you, I'm just repeating what everyone else says, that it's fluff, right? That you don't have to have it, that you don't need it. So, and for me, I always need the data to kind of justify that. Let's talk numbers. So, what are your numbers that kind of justify this type of investment?
Yeah, the fact is that there's been a lot of people from CEB to Harvard Business Review to ICM Unlimited who've been doing in Universum, who've been doing a lot of research on this. Is employer branding a fad? And I think actually what they're finding out is that it actually dramatically ties to revenue and your cost per hire. I mean, I'm wearing an HRS shirt, HR Open Suit. There's a new case study that Lars and Berger just went out with around Virgin.
Yeah.
If you like, the thing is, they started finding out that their candidate experience wasn't great, right? And they surveyed candidates, and I think it was something like 10% of them or something like that said that, or 16% of them said that after the experience they had in the interview process, they would never fly with Virgin Airlines again.
That's
And they
rough.
found out that was actually costing the company $6 million in lost revenue because of their candidate experience. So what did they do? They flipped the switch. They focused really hard on candidate experience, and they blew it out of the park. And they actually found that now people who went through their interview experience were more likely now becoming customers for life because of that experience. And they increased revenue for the company from their applicants by like 5.7 million a year. So now you're talking about HR and recruiting being a revenue driver. Because the thing is that your candidates are your customers are your candidates. Your employer brand is your company brand as well. It's two different stories you're telling, but it humanizes your brand. People want to do business with companies that treat their employees well. People want to do business the way that treat candidates well. And now, I mean, historically, recruiting hasn't treated candidates very well or really focused much on candidate experience, but it's very much tied to employer branding and very much tied to your company's brand. You know, it changes brand perceptions. So it's really important. And then there's another study that I referenced in a recent article that you guys actually promoted.
Yeah.
It was called Why Your Company Needs Employer Branding and How to Get Started. It's on the proactivetalent.io blog. If you want to check it, it's also on recruiting blogs.
Mhm.
And I started that article with sort of 5 facts. And one of them was a study conducted by Harvard Business Review and ICM Unlimited that they surveyed a ton of companies, like hundreds of companies, and they found out sort of varying levels of whether they had a poor employer brand or a great employer brand, and then what their average cost per hire at these companies were. And they found that companies with a poor employer brand and sort of a negative culture, they paid 10% more for their hires. So you think about it. I mean, just think about it at its core. If you're really building a great culture and you're telling that story externally, there's people who are going to want to work there because they really believe in your mission and really like your culture. You can afford to not. Companies that don't have that, they have to use other levers.
Exactly.
Money. So then you have to throw a signing bonus in there to get them to really accept your offer over another company. You've got to bump the salary a little bit more to get them in. But if you're a great company, you can give them a fair market salary and that's it, because they're not in it just for the money. In fact, I saw another image on LinkedIn today about like these are the reasons that people come to work at a company, and it's like paid well, recognition, and I'm like, that's upside down, actually.
I did the same thing. I'm like, something's wrong with this.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I get what you're trying to say. It's true. These are all motivators and things that are important, like that they're being heard, that they're being recognized, that they're making an impact. But like pay, I would put like at the bottom of that list, because no matter what, like no company's like intentionally trying to get people for as cheap as they want. They do some comp analysis. They know what the market is. They try to pay anywhere from 50 to maybe 75% of market for tech, at least. Money shouldn't be the biggest thing. And then I love that, like Massachusetts just passed that amazing law, like around you can't ask about previous salary. Again, it's another thing that's going to force us to put the money talk not at the front of the discussion, but more towards the back where it belongs. Assess fit, assess culture fit, assess skills, assess potential, and things like that. So yeah, I think if you have a bad employer brand because you're not valuing your employees, that's usually one of the biggest causes. You're gonna have to pay more for those employees. You're gonna have to pay by your loyalty, which I think is a bad business practice. I think if instead you take those dollars and you invest them into the experience that employees have, like you know what? Give them free lunch. Like,
Yeah.
you're not. That's it's the little things that really matter. And that's what I'm starting to find by being a consultant, like coming in and looking at all these different companies and different cultures, is I'm finding the ones that focus on the little things, like just the little small conveniences that don't cost much, but add a lot of value and experience to the employee in their day-to-day lives, just have a much better culture and therefore a much better employer brand. And then the ones that are really thinking more about, revenue and seeing people and HR as a cost center, they tend to like not have very engaged employees and a declining culture.
Yeah. So, Animal's here. Thank you for coming. And so he said, if we say that it's less cost per hire because you have employer branding, that's pretty generic. So, and I think I know the answer, but I want to walk through kind of the full cycle and where employer branding contributes to each part of the cycle as like our last couple of minutes. And if anybody has questions, please shoot those in. We have 4 minutes left. And from my perspective, I'm totally with you on this, that employer branding helps every part. Because when I calculate cost per hire, it's not, I paid this much to post this ad, divide by this many people, you know what I mean? And then I got this one. I think, so when it starts at the job ad for me, that you don't have to spend as much money promoting it because you're getting more referrals, because that you started to build a reputation. So where does employer branding cut money out of cost per hire, kind of all the way through the cycle?
Yeah, I love it. Everyone wants to like give me the hard evidence, not ROI. And you know what? There's been companies where I've been able to do that. And building that machine it takes a lot of time. It requires a great combination of marketing principles, great culture, and then really good technology to quantitatively measure everything. Most companies can't do this. I've built that machine like 5 times, and it's really hard, right? So you're not always going to get that, but you can't go out there and just be sort of a negative Nancy and be just because you can't measure everything, it doesn't work. It's kind of like, how do you choose the person you want to marry? Do you make them give you a resume? I need to know that there's a 70% chance that our marriage is going to be successful. Does that stop you from
like the harmony approach?
Is kind of gut and just knowing and good common sense, and by doing it and seeing tangibly the results, you can't do a pipeline metrics audit on everything, right? You just have to know that it's the right thing and that it works because you've seen it do it. I have now built these strategies at everything from a 200-person startup to working with 300,000-person companies doing these strategies. I know they work because not only have I actually built the machine to really measure it, which means putting an analytics layer around every part of the process.
Yeah.
Meaning I'm doing a content marketing approach to talent attraction, funneling them into relevant jobs that match the stories that we're telling. I'm measuring it all the way to source, apply, to hire, and then to performance data, anything. I've benefited because I've actually worked at companies that built the software from end to end to measure this stuff. So I'm lucky. Most companies can't do this, and they won't for many years to come. So I don't think that should stop these companies from doing this, because not every company can, one, invest in that money, 2, have the skills internally to put together that Frankenstein machine and invest into doing that. And also, most companies don't need to. I don't need to know that by telling my employees amazing stories and really sharing an authentic view of my company is going to benefit and make my hiring process more efficient. Common sense tells me that the more information that candidates have about working in my company that's real, the better informed decisions that they'll make and the better informed decisions that my recruiters will make. I don't need that much data to know that that's a fact.
Totally. So I want to ask one more question. I realize we're at time, but this is something that's been rolling around in my head. So, like, I'm a company, and I know I'm actually looking through the names who's on here. Thank you so much for being here. Kelly, Ellie, Audra, thank you. But I wanted to ask, for the companies that, I'm a big company in a small town kind of thing. nobody knows who we are. We do, let's say, like, automotive parts or something. But small town, where would they start on this kind of employer branding journey after, if they're talking to people, how do they start to translate that? Or do they call you? Or
Yeah, call me. No, no. I think small town, you're just doing your local market, then
right,
like a digital marketing approach, not something you probably need. I think I look at every company on a case by case basis, and I say, okay, where have you historically gotten talent before? What are your key business initiatives? Like, what is your business trying to do to grow? What skills and what type of people does it take to do that? Then where do those people hang out, and where have you had success finding them in the past? And then maybe what are some again, it's a multi-channel strategy. Social is one channel. Your career site is one channel. Online marketing is another channel, blogging. But then online events, your employees' networks, your executives and your leader and your, if you're a small town company, your founders' network and their brand is another channel. Like, it's understanding what are all the different players and channels in this talent attraction pie, and finding out what's going to work for you. So if I'm a local, parts manufacturer company, maybe I'm going to one of the union meetings and I'm networking and meeting people. Like, it's just knowing where your audience is and then going there and be authentic and try to build relationships.
totally. It's that hyper local approach.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a group of 300 people that you advertise to. You don't need 3,000.
Yeah. No,
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely. If it's local, go local. And
Wow.
what I love about digital is that digital can be global or local as well. Like, if I'm trying to get truck drivers for a trucking company, they're probably not on Twitter. They're driving, right?
Right.
Like, maybe I put up a local billboard during the path in the path close to my office that I know a lot of truckers pass. Like,
Yes.
maybe it's at truck stops, like in places that I know they're going to be spending time or their eyeballs are going to be at. It's probably not going to be Facebook, but they may have a Facebook account, so I might like a targeted ad for people in that small town who
Yeah.
are truckers.
Or
And
work
then
for
if
my
I'm a big
company.
tech, I may do a totally different strategy. I may sponsor an ad on TechCrunch, or I'll go on Stack Overflow, and if I know I'm looking specifically for Ruby on Rails people, then I'm going to advertise my tech culture on all the forums that talk about Ruby on Rails.
Brilliant.
It's knowing where your market is and targeting it. It's no more is it like shouting to the world that you're doing this, because then it's a wasted effort,
Yeah.
and wasted
You
money.
don't need a broad net. You need a small net of people that are actually qualified.
Yeah, to me, that's all the ninja, like recruiting and sourcing ninja stuff. Like, be a ninja in a way an actual ninja is. Like, be precise. Like, use your energy
Yep.
in the most impactful way.
Totally. Totally. Well, that's our time. These always
Oh,
fly by. I'm like, oh, okay, it's done. Uh, Thank you
let's
so
just
much
do
for
an hour.
yeah, just keep going. I will get you on a webinar soon and we'll make you do the whole hour. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Next week on Recruiting Live, we have Pete Radloff, and he'll be doing a session on uh, targeted sourcing. So really strategic sourcing strategies instead of the wide net. We're going to talk about how to do those very targeted nets. So same time, same place next week. We'll see you then. Thanks again, Will.
Bye.
Adios.